This is an introduction to a few German infantry type. Starting with an officer. Putting their knowledge of military theory to good practical use was an ability common to all German commissioned officers. Utterly dedicated and highly disciplined, they were an inspiration to those under their command. Hence the unrivaled efficiency of World War II of German combat units. Rifleman. The basic infantry unit of all industrial armies is the Rifleman. During World War II, German riflemen stood their ground firmly despite extremely difficult conditions. Armed with Mauser 98K bolt-action rifles, they were formidable opponents for Allied infantry. And lethal to light armor from the sand dunes of North Africa to the snowy tundra of Russia. Well aware of their vulnerability in the open, they sought to engage targets from the cover of trenches, bunkers or buildings. SMG Soldier. The German army equipped most of its foot soldiers with submachine guns, thus gaining a firepower advantage against Allied riflemen. Once the shortcomings of the early models were finally solved, the MP-40 submachine gun proved to be a formidably effective weapon. During World War II, over 1 million were produced. Its typical range was inferior to that of the Mauser rifle, but it could cause mayhem amidst enemy ranks attacking in masses. Practically useless against armored vehicles, the MP-40 had a definite edge over rifles in close-quarter firefights in buildings. Medics. During World War II, all parties tried to provide quality medical assistance to their soldiers, and many owe their lives to the medics on the battlefield. The job was extremely dangerous, but had medics been able to save key officers, the outcome of the war could easily have turned in the Axis favor. With only a Luger P-08 as a defensive weapon, medics are the weakest units in attack, and the most vulnerable to attacks of any kind. Sapper. Many minefields were laid during the war. Their main purpose was to reinforce defensive lines, but they could also cover withdrawals. Laying minefields was the easy part, but specialists were needed to detect and disarm them. German sappers, armed only with a Luger P-08, were indispensable for finding and defusing mines. They were ineffective as fighters and very vulnerable to attacks, so ample escort was needed to provide them with cover. Scout. Scouts played a very important but dangerous combat role. They usually worked on the front line, gathering information on enemy positions, installations, supplies and equipment. The information they provided to their officers often proved decisive in battle. German scouts are fast-moving and can sight enemy units from great distances. They are however lightly equipped and highly vulnerable. Sniper. There was no escaping snipers, they were omnipresent, lethal and virtually invisible. Armed with Mauser 98K bolt-action rifles, they could strike from great distances. In World War II, they were deployed to guard either trench posts or elevated positions in towns where picking off officers or disabling vehicles could make a real difference. While their great firing range is an advantage, snipers do need time to reload, which makes them vulnerable in close combat. Flamethrower. No infantry weapon could match the devastating power of the flamethrower. In World War II, it was the most inhuman, but the most effective, close combat weapon. Under high pressure, the fuel unleashed from the tanks mounted on the soldiers' back erupted into a long flame, destroying everything and everyone in its path. German flamethrower units were very slow, making them vulnerable in open areas. They could not, however, be beaten in close combat such as bunkers and buildings. And that is a brief summary of a few German infantry type. If you wish to see more, make sure that you are subscribed.